Yo, welcome back to another video, and today we're reacting to what happens after an airline shuts down by jet crumbs. I took a couple flights on Spirit. I'm not much of a flying person myself. I'm very much of a homebody, stay in state type of nigga, but when I have caught flights, there's a couple that's been through Spirit and a couple through other airlines, but it is sad to see a competitor with reasonable prices go bankrupt and ultimately shut down. So let's learn and see what's going on since Spirit is no longer in the picture. Appreciate y'all for pulling up. Please drop a like, subscribe. Let's not waste too much time. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it.
Spirit Airlines told its passengers not to come to the airport. Every flight canceled, every counter closed. 17,000 employees found out they were losing their jobs with almost no notice in the middle of the night.
Ooh, that's scary to hear. Oh my goodness. Imagine losing your job with no notice and you kind of got to figure that shit out at the last minute. And this is what these companies can do. These million and billion dollar companies can just shut down and basically tell you, hey, figure that shit the fuck out. And that's what you got to do. It's devastating for these people out here. I feel so bad for them. That's wild. You couldn't offer them a severance package. You couldn't offer them anything, right? This is why the people at the top are so disgusting to me, because it's like, I got what I need. I don't care. I don't give a fuck about nobody else. And this world is just full of selfish people. All they think about is money, their financial gain, how they can gain more power and more influence in the world, but they don't care about the common man or the common woman. Man. I hate talking about shit like this because it kind of get me a low key upset. It's like, fuck, you don't care about nobody? Damn, how could you be so selfish? It's wild to me.
And 91 planes were left sitting at 26 airports across the country with nowhere to go. Shutting down an airline isn't like closing a restaurant. You can't just lock the doors and walk away. There are planes that need to physically move. Passengers with tickets to flights that no longer exist, gates and landing slots that other airlines are already circling, and 17,000 people who woke up employed and went to bed without a job. First thing that hits is the passengers, and it's messy. Spirit said they'd automatically refund anyone who paid with a credit or debit card, and for most people that actually happened pretty fast. The airline said the majority of those refunds were processed by Saturday evening, the same day they shut down. But not everyone paid with a card. If you booked through a travel agent, you had to contact them directly. If you used a voucher or Spirit loyalty points, those were just frozen. The airline said compensation for those would be determined at a later date through the bankruptcy process, which is corporate speak for you're probably not getting that money back.
Surely.
Free Spirit points, gone. Not transferable to any other airline, not redeemable anywhere. Just
damn, they couldn't work out. Well, I know another airline was trying to buy them, and I think the government denied that. But they couldn't work out something with. That's how you know people don't give a fuck. You couldn't work out something to bring whatever points that person may have had, or a little bit of those points, and allow them to use that to make up for the flight that they supposedly have to cancel now because of poor business decisions. They couldn't help them out, like, hey, Delta, American Airlines, this, that, and the third, for the people who, had a flight here. If you paid through points, you had this amount of points will allow you to use those points for one of our flights, just so you can get to where you need to. Nah, they don't give a fuck about that. Competitor's gone, and guess what? If you want to take that flight, you're going to have to pay with one of us. That's crazy. And it's interesting that they shut down before Frontier, because I think Frontier is awful as well.
Gone. When then there were the people who were mid-trip, like they'd flown to their destination on Spirit and now had no flight home. That's when the Department of Transportation stepped in. They coordinated what they called rescue fares across 9 airlines: United, JetBlue, Delta, American, Southwest, Frontier, Allegiant, Avelo, Breeze. Basically every carrier that overlapped with Spirit's routes. United capped fares at $199 for most routes, $299 for longer ones. JetBlue offered $99 one-way fares. Delta and American offered reduced fares on shared routes.
So they actually
Southwest
did step
capped
in and
prices
help out
at their ticket counters for a few days. But those deals were temporary, a few days, maybe a week.
Of course.
And the people who didn't hear about them in time, or couldn't afford even the discounted fares, were stuck figuring it out on their own.
Of course.
Hertz offered one-way car rental deals so people could drive instead. But some travelers faced choices like driving 10 hours from Atlanta to Miami rather than paying $600 for a last-minute replacement flight. That's the reality of an airline shutting down with almost no warning. Which brings us to the planes themselves. 91 aircraft scattered across 26 airports, and that's just the ones that were still moving around the network. Spirit had about 170 aircraft total, but around 40 were already parked at storage facilities in Arizona as part of earlier downsizing. So the 91 are the ones that got caught mid-operation when the lights went off. But Spirit didn't actually own most of those planes. Many airlines, including Spirit, lease a large portion of their fleet rather than owning the aircraft outright. In Spirit's case, all but about 48 of their 170 planes were managed by leasing companies, AerCap, Avalon, Air Lease Corporation, and others. The second Spirit stopped operating, those lessors wanted their planes back, immediately. Problem is, getting them back is, kind of a logistical nightmare. These planes are parked at gates, on taxiways, wherever they happen to be when the shutdown hit. Airport authorities don't want to touch them. Nobody on the ground has authorization to move them. It's basically chaos. So the less...
Yeah, this sounds like an unorganized mess. My goodness. The fact that a company could just shut down without giving people a notice or let them know in advance, hey, we're going to be shutting down in this month. And then isn't it funny how companies require that you give them a 2-week notice when you want to leave? But when they want to shut down the whole fucking company or they want to fire you, they're not required to give you a notice. They can just do that shit on the spot and you got to figure that shit out. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that motherfucking wild? They already knew they was in a bad situation for who knows how long. But they could have at least had the decency to go into the new year knowing they know where they was fucking sitting at. They know how much time they had. They knew roughly at least an estimate of how much time they had before this company was going underwater. I think in January, February, because actually I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this shit went down in March, maybe April. You at least at the beginning of the new year or December, you could have let the workers at least, and your customers, the people who fucking kept you in business for so long, you could have let them know, hey, we'll be shutting down in the month of March or the month of April. Whatever the case may be, if you bought tickets, this is how they'll be refunded to you. If you use points, whatever the case may be, let's get this organized now so that we can make sure these people are taken care of. So by the time we shut down, we got things in place. We know how to get our planes moved off of these here and there, everywhere, all this. But no, we just want to do a mass shutdown. People figure that shit the fuck out. The planes, somebody else will figure that out. And we'll take everything else to court and let somebody else deal with it. What the fuck? This is what I'm saying. This is how shit is ran in the United States. It's all about motherfucking money and business. Once the business is no longer in operation, we don't care about anything else. Somebody else will figure that shit the fuck out. We got to hold these companies liable for shit like this. Like, they should be fined. Hopefully these airports and shit are fining them for these planes just sitting here and not moving. Hopefully the companies that allowed Spirit to lease the planes, they're throwing some type of monthly fine or weekly fine or whatever the case may be. With since they're not returning our planes, you've officially been shut down. Like, nigga, you gonna have to come up out of pocket if you're gonna inconvenience us. That's how I look at it. So the airport, and the leasing company, you got to come up out of pocket. I wish there was a way that consumers could make these companies come up out of pocket playing with our money and shit. The refunds, cool. You got that with credit and debit cards. But what about the points? What about the other means of ways that we can pay for flights? Help a nigga out. Do something. Not just, send that weak ass HR statement basically saying you're not getting your money back. Man, thank goodness I'm not a part of that. That'd be tight.
Hired a company called Nomadic Aviation Group to go get the planes. Nomadic specializes in this, aircraft repossession. They send qualified pilots to physically fly the planes out. And in this case, they actually hired about 20 former Spirit pilots to do the flying. Some of these guys were showing up to airports in jeans and t-shirts, no airline uniform, trying to convince airport security that yes, they're authorized to get on that plane and fly it away. One nomadic executive described the whole process as mass confusion. You walk up to a person of authority and say, "I need to get on that airplane, I'm repossessing it." And the first thing they say is no. The planes are being ferried to desert storage facilities in Arizona, Phoenix Goodyear Airport, and Pinal Air Park mostly. The dry climate is ideal for storing aircraft long-term because there's less risk of corrosion. From there, the lessors decide what happens next. Some of these planes will get repainted, reconfigured, and leased to another airline within months. Some will be parted out, engines, landing gear, avionics, and the components sold separately. On some of these planes, the engines alone are worth more than the airframe. We actually did a whole video on how this leasing system works. Worth checking out after this one if you're curious. But the short version is, when an airline dies, the physical aircraft don't die with it. They just get recycled into someone else's fleet. Okay, so passengers get refunded, planes get repossessed. But there's a bigger question lurking underneath all of this, one that affects people who never even flew Spirit. What happens to the price of your ticket on every other airline?
They go up, right?
CBS ran an analysis using aviation data from Cirium, and they found that when Spirit exited a route, average fares on that route jumped about 23%. That's
Damn! A competitor steps out, and now we gotta fucking pay for the fact that the competitor steps out. What? We get hoed. Well, us Americans are getting hoed. That's why I don't see how people can be content working jobs, or actually, no, you can work a job, but just staying comfortable where you are, making whatever amount that you're making. Let's say some people are roughly around minimum wage, a little bit, a couple dollars above that. I don't see how in this economy you could stay content with just being okay with just sitting right there at that amount. And if you get a raise, you get a raise. If you don't, you don't. And you just, keep moving through life like that. I just don't understand that. Me personally, I cannot comprehend that. I have to find a way to get to the money, bruh, because I want to be financially stable in this economy, because this economy is constantly fucking us left and right. They don't give a fuck about us. They don't care. They don't give a fuck about the consumer. I mean, you can see it. I mean, things go up with no hesitation. Nothing ever goes down. Everything just goes up, and they expect us to adapt and adjust and get it done, because at the end of the day, a lot of these things we need. We need these things to survive, such as groceries, gas, and things of that nature. So it's ultimately best for the consumer to find a way to continue to increase their income, because if you don't, you are going to be struggling. You're going to find yourself spending all of the money that you work so hard over a week, a 2 week, a month period, however you get paid, going straight to the necessities such as rent, your mortgage, your bills within the household, groceries, important things for your children. And then next thing you know, once all that's taken care of, you look at your bank account, there's nothing fucking there. You can't even actually enjoy life. You just find yourself existing through life, and all that hard work is going towards everything else but yourself. You the one working your ass off, and you can't even use your money on your own thing. And then what you end up doing is relying on credit cards, and then you go into debt, and then you can't pay the debt off because your money was already being used for other things. And that's why this economy is in a never-ending cycle of what it is, because most people in the United States are in debt. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but this is where we are. And I just watched a Tommy G video on the fact that the Pentagon, trillions of dollars being wasted. Taxpayer money, trillions of dollars being wasted. And they're trying to increase what was just increased for their budget of 1 trillion to now 1.5 trillion. And it's like, bro, if you take that money right there, every person in the United States can go to college. They could pay for it. But no, they want to spend all that money on fucking the military, bro. Man, I'm probably gonna react to that video. No, it's probably gonna be difficult to react to that video because I've already watched it. But man, I learned so much about how much money is just being wasted. How much of taxpayer dollars are being wasted on a yearly basis. Trillions of dollars. And majority of it is just going to the defense of the United States. And it's like, why are we preparing for a forever war when most of the time, I mean, especially in times of peace, We paying all this money and still paying we paying all this money for when it comes to taxes, and they continuously keep buying more and more shit. And it's like, bruh, our budget is ridiculous compared to other countries, and other countries are doing just fine. The United States is paranoid. Fuck, it took 9/11 for this country to become so paranoid that they want to overly prepare for something that may never come. If it does come, understandable, but God, relax. You don't need that much money towards the military. My goodness, why don't you help educate the people that already live in your country? You know, how about that?
Roughly $60 more for a round-trip ticket. And passenger volume on those routes dropped about 20%. Fewer people flying, paying more to do it. Because Spirit wasn't a small player. At Fort Lauderdale, their biggest hub, Spirit had been carrying over 28% of all passengers the year before the shutdown, more than any other airline at that airport. JetBlue announced 11 new routes out of Fort Lauderdale within days of the shutdown. They saw the gap and moved in immediately. American and United both started looking at adding bigger planes or more flights on routes where they overlapped with Spirit. But for some routes, especially smaller cities where Spirit was the only ultra-low-cost option, nobody's rushing in. Those cities might just lose their cheapest air service entirely. And the people who flew Spirit because it was the only airline they could afford are getting priced out. That's actually the thing about ultra-low-cost carriers going away. They don't just carry passengers, they keep fares down on every airline that competes with them. When Spirit was selling a route for $89, Delta and American had to keep their prices close to that. Now that pricing pressure is gone, and the remaining airlines don't have a lot of incentive to keep fares low anymore. And then there are the 17,000 people. Spirit.
So once again, like I said, consumer gets fucking rear-ended, bro. The consumer gets rear-ended. We're the ones who always have to figure it the fuck out. Nobody else has to. And when these companies go into turmoil, for example, I'm pretty sure, I think it was around 2020 when they first got hit with all this bullshit, Spirit got a buyout from the government. I wish consumers could get a fucking buyout. Hey, I'm struggling over here. Can you help me out, government, that I'm paying fucking thousands of dollars of my taxes to? Can you help me out? Can you give me some of that tax money back so that I can fucking survive in the United States? No, we'll rather take that money and spend it on fucking missiles and planes.
Employed about 14,000 directly, plus another 3,000 or so contractors and support workers. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, ramp workers, corporate staff. They were notified overnight, which had the effect of making sure the last planes in the air could land safely and crews could be accounted for before the news reached most passengers. Pilots are among the best positioned out of all of them. There's still strong demand for pilots with mainline jet experience in the US, and Spirit's entire fleet was Airbus A320 family, one of the most common aircraft types in the world. American, Delta, United, JetBlue, many of the majors quickly offered preferential interviews and fast-tracked applications from Spirit pilots. American even set up dedicated recruiting events. Flight attendants are a different story. The hiring process is typically slower and more competitive. Mechanics and ground crew are somewhere in between. Experienced aviation mechanics are always in demand, but the jobs might not be in the same city. And corporate staff, the headquarters employees in Dania Beach, Florida, they're the ones with the hardest road. Those jobs don't transfer easily to another airline.
Of course they
don't. And there
don't.
aren't many airlines hiring entire corporate departments at once. Spirit isn't the first airline to disappear like this. Won't be the last either. Pan Am shut down in 1991, Eastern Airlines the same year. 2WA got absorbed by American in 2001. Over in Europe, Monarch Airlines collapsed in 2017. Thomas Cook's airline went under in 2019. The pattern is pretty consistent every time. An airline gets squeezed by rising costs, takes on debt to survive, runs out of cash, and either gets bought or liquidated. Spirit's version of this had, a few extra layers, and the airline was already in deep financial trouble long before the final blow landed. Pratt & Whitney engine problems had grounded dozens of their planes for months. The airline got compensation, but it wasn't enough. Then the JetBlue merger got blocked by the Biden Department of Justice on antitrust grounds in early 2024. Spirit hadn't been profitable since before the pandemic, and the losses kept mounting. $2.76 billion just in 2025.
Damn.
They filed for bankruptcy twice. Once in late 2024.
Twice. And they got bailed out and still was operable. Yeah, oh my God. A nigga can't pay his rent. once and fucking he's out of there. You get what I'm saying? We prioritize business in this country, and it's so sad. It's so unfortunate because it's like for the business to thrive, guess what? They need consumers. So why don't we help out the consumers as well when they are struggling, when they need help? Well, we know we'll do everything we can to keep these businesses up and running. This country runs on bankruptcy. I mean, most of the millionaires and billionaires out here these days have went through bankruptcy, and they still thrive and they still got money, and their companies are still going.
Again in August 2025.
The mourning of Spirit will be more important than the mourning of the homeless population throughout the United States, of trying to figure out, hey, how can we resolve this issue? No, we're more interested in how can we get Spirit up and running. And if they have to file for 2 bankruptcies and get some cash from the government on the back end, we'll do that. We'll try our best to keep them up and running. I understand what happens when Spirit, I mean, he's breaking that down, is no longer in the market and how it affects the market. But at the end of the day, you need consumers to get on these planes. You need consumers to pay for the tickets to keep these companies running. But we would rather prioritize the businesses over the people who keep the businesses running.
And then the Iran conflict hit in early 2026, and jet fuel prices roughly doubled. Spirit just burned through whatever cash it had left. By then, the airline was banking on a government bailout as its last realistic path to survival. The Trump administration was in advanced discussions for a $500 million rescue package. It fell through, and Spirit was done. And the broader pattern underneath Spirit's collapse is something we keep seeing in the industry. Spirit's version of the ultra-low-cost model was getting squeezed from both sides. Legacy carriers launched basic economy to steal the budget traveler, and costs, fuel, labor, maintenance, kept climbing while fares stayed rock bottom. The gap between what they charged and what it cost to fly got thinner and thinner. Now, other ultra-low-cost carriers are still flying. Frontier is still operating, Allegiant is still operating. Some of them are even expanding to pick up Spirit's old traffic. But they're all facing the same pressure, and Spirit's collapse is a warning about where that math can end up. When an airline shuts down, it looks like a sudden event. One day they're flying, the next day they're not. But underneath, it's more like a disassembly. The planes get repossessed and fly again for someone else. The routes get carved up by competitors. The gates get reassigned. The pilots get hired across town. Every piece of the airline gets absorbed by the rest of the industry. Airlines don't really die, they just get taken apart. And the ones who pay the price are the employees who lose their seniority, the communities that lose their cheapest flights, and the passengers who happen to be in the middle of it when it all came down.
Man, that's tough. I feel bad. I definitely feel bad for the consumers, most of all. I could care less about the business. It is what it is. There'll be another company, another airline that comes about in a couple of years that'll probably take over from there and do the same thing over and over again. So I don't give a fuck about the business. I do feel bad for the people, but I'm curious to hear what y'all think. How y'all feel about this? Was Spirit one of the flights that she was taking pretty often, or you don't really give too much fucks because you'll get on one of the other ones? Other than that, bro, like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Other than that, take it easy.